Good morning, Breakfast with Bacon fans. I have an amazing guest today. Her name is Katy Francisco, and I'm titling this show, My Daddy's Name is Donor. Katy Francisco is a woman born from donor conception who has done advocacy work, sharing her story, supporting restorative. I have to read this because I get tongue-tied. Restorative reproductive medicine. We're going to ask you what that is specifically. She's sure. I'm going to keep this going and not edit this out, all you viewers, to let you know just how tongue-tied I can get, right? But she served 6 years as operations manager for Canavox, the Marriage and Family Project of the Witherspoon Institute, and we're going to talk about that. And 3 years for the International Institute for, here's the tongue-tying again, Restorative Reproductive Medicine as Secretariat. You proud of me, Katy, for getting that part out so far?
Yes.
But the important part is that she met her husband while living in Jersey, as my girlfriend says, and she now supports him full-time, as well as raising her son, and she's very close to having another one. So talk about being busy. You now reside in Florida. Thank God you have the sunshine, because you're going to need that with 2 kids. And I think to keep you healthy going, oh, Jesus, help me. So Katy, welcome to the show. I'm right, aren't I?
Thank you. Yes, definitely.
A little bit first.
Definitely.
How's your little guy? How is he, just a spunky
Yes,
toddler?
he's full of life. He's 3 and a half.
Yeah.
So always discovering new words and new ways the world functions. He loves hoses. That's his thing.
Hoses?
Hoses, like water hoses.
Okay. Does he
Yeah.
drink from them?
He tries to, and I tell him that he can't.
Wow. Let him do it. Let him build up the
Yeah,
antibodies.
he's a
But
cutie. Yeah.
it must be, it's kind of a weird place, I think, to start our conversation. But as a donor conceived woman, do you ever think about that while you're pregnant? Because you're having your child is yours and your husband's. Is there a difference, or does that rise up in you, thoughts or feelings
I
about your
don't
own?
really, yeah, I don't think about it for me because my husband is the father of my children. But I do think about it with um how weird it must be to be pregnant with someone else's child who you're not married to.
Yeah.
And if, I don't know if do people just not think of it that way, or do they just not think about it at all when
Yeah.
they're dealing with infertility and they use a sperm donor? I don't know.
I
Or an egg
wonder,
donor.
I think there might be a blindness, right? Because
Yeah.
we get so into our own path that we don't often think about those things, because I tend to think if we thought about those things, we'd hesitate, you know?
There's so much suffering too. So you're just thinking about, oh, someone else has sperm that's working, so let's just use it. And then
Yeah.
the baby's born, and it's kind of like reality hits you in the face where you don't really fully understand this child because you don't even know half of where they come from. And,
Yeah.
they don't look like your spouse. They might a little bit. You might have some similar traits. I know in my story, I was able to look at medical records, and they had a description of the man who had raised me. So they actually tried to match up a donor with how my mother's husband looked. So it wasn't completely blind, even though I think most of them are. It's more just about, did they go to an Ivy League school? Are they medical student? That kind of thing. I,
Yeah.
it probably totally depends on the situation, but I've had that thought myself a few times where like I thought, oh, it's not a big deal, or oh, it's, you know, this man's fertility is fine, so maybe he can be fertile for this other person who's not working. And it's like, it just doesn't work like that. It's not like a kidney transfer or something.
Yeah. Well, my PhD is in communication. And so language is powerful. And I think you've heard, as many of us have heard, he who owns the language owns the message. And the pro-abortion people changed it from saying the baby to the fetus, or the blob, a blob of tissue. So what they wanted to do is separate what it truly was, from that truth, to make it easier for people to do the deed. And so what you're saying is, I do think there was a blindness by just saying it's a sperm. You're just donating
Right.
sperm. You're not donating your fatherhood to a human. And I think that makes a difference.
Yes, that's a big, yeah, it's a big difference in the words that we use.
So I've been passionate about this issue for a couple years because I have a family member who she had a disease, which they at first thought was cancer. It had a very low survival rate, and she was terrified, knew she had to go through some terrible treatment, bone marrow transfer, and she eventually got her brother's bone marrow, praise God, and she's alive. But knowing that the chemotherapy would kill her eggs, she harvested her eggs and wants to have children in the future. And she has a child. She's unmarried, but she wants to give that child a sibling. And so the father of that child, who she's not with, she at least said, ask him, can you donate your sperm? I won't ever ask you for custody or payments or anything. I just want my child to have a sibling. It would be cool if the sperm donor and the egg were the same parents, right? He said no, which I think was a fantastic thing because he's married to a different woman now. And it's like, I'm not going to father a child, essentially. So kudos to him. So she's considering going to a sperm donation clinic. And I've talked to her and I've talked to her mother and I've talked to them about stories like yours, which have said children conceived of donors are not all happy. As a matter of fact, and you can correct me on this, Katy, I would say those that are unhappy or have a void or something here are the rule, and those who are perfectly fine with it are the exception. You can correct me there.
Yeah, no,
But
totally.
yeah, but I said and I've sent her brochures from the Ruth Institute that talks about, people like you who were conceived of sperm donation. One woman on that brochure said, if my mother thought she was doing me a favor, she better think again. This is a horrible, horrible thing to put a child through. Anyway,
Mhm.
so my family member and her mother said, that's probably the minority. Chances are they'll be happy. And I said, you're okay with taking that chance with someone's life? What if it is 1 in a million? And what if you get that one child that's 1 in a million who says, I'm miserable not knowing who my father is,
Yeah.
and they still want to do it. So,
Well, they're just valuing their own desire over the best interests of the children.
so talk about
Yeah.
that. What is,
Well,
so,
and it's not like, I don't know, some people say, if I don't do this, this child won't exist, but that's not your responsibility to create children in situations where they shouldn't. Um,
well, play God.
it doesn't mean like it's not your responsibility to intentionally create children in a situation that's not good for them. Children are a gift from the Lord. They're not commodities, which is basically how they're treating this this situation.
Yeah.
She wants a sibling because it would be fun. Of course, a lot of people feel that way. Not everyone feels that way. I want my son to have a sibling so bad, so I get it. But it doesn't mean she owes it to her child or that that's the best way to go about it, right? The best way to go about it would be to get married and then have more children with your
With the
husband.
father. Hmm.
Yeah, preferably with the original father, but obviously that's not an option in that case. So,
Right. Right.
which, Katie Faust talks about this with I know she connected us, but the importance of marriage to children's needs and fulfilling their desires. All children want to see their parents get along. Sometimes, I don't know, my son put my husband and I together the other day, said, Daddy, dance with mommy. And he just watched us for a minute. He
Yeah.
loves when we're hugging, he wants to be a part of it. Like he comes and wants to be part of the big hug.
That
And
is
it's so
so
beautiful.
true. It is beautiful. Every child, there is something complete. Now, my mom left my father for a woman. And so
Oh,
that's a whole
wow.
different podcast we're going to
Is
do.
that what kind of led you to your vocation?
Perhaps, perhaps. My vocation's on marriage, I, like you, am a very devout Catholic, and I just want to do God's will. So basically, my Catholic faith has opened my eyes, and my mom lives a celibate life as well now because she's realized
Wow.
that that lifestyle wasn't in line with her Catholic faith. But unlike many
Exactly.
people raised by lesbians, I had my dad in my life, and my mom and dad were always very present in our life. And my mom never forced her partner on us. And we'd still take, and her partner, thank God, would, not mind when we took family pictures, mom and dad and the four of us kids. So we had this semblance of it's still just the six of us. And since neither mom nor dad ever remarried, I have the ideal in that sense, but it
Yeah.
did lead me in this path of truth. What is truth? And years ago, the idea of artificial insemination, I was like, what's the church against that? It caused me to think. And this is part of it. When we disorder what God says, a child wants a mom and a dad, they want them together. That's why I'm against divorce, because, well, it's against divorce in God's church. The child is happiest and fulfilled when they have the mother, their own DNA mother, their own DNA father in that house, when they're happily married. I mean, we just got to put all that together. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's a big question for both of us, right? I want to ask you this question, and just tell my viewers that you are a devout Catholic and you were excited to know that I was too, and you were able to talk about
Mhm.
your faith.
Yeah.
So, and you've already told me you have, we're not going to talk about the man who raised you. We'll talk about your mom, but see, I'm trying to be sensitive here.
I'm also happy to share my story. I know I sent you an
Okay.
article that I wrote. So, but
And
I
we'll put a
imagine
link to
most
that
of our listeners
article in the
haven't
show notes here.
heard
Okay, let
it.
me just
Okay.
say this then. Do you believe, are you happy with this decision, unhappy with this decision that your parents went through? To people considering this, what would you say?
Um, well, I haven't thought about that in a while. Um, I mean, totally against donor conception. It's not, it's not right. It's not the right mindset that is natural to parenting. When you become pregnant as a woman, it's such a sacrifice. Like motherhood starts the day you find out you're pregnant. And there is so much suffering that goes into just giving your body to your child, but it's also beautiful. I love feeling my baby kick in my stomach. And but it's such a sacrifice. And so that should be the mindset going into mother and fatherhood, not
What can I get?
taking, like, I'm going to take someone else's gametes so that I can have a child. Like that whole mindset is just about you, really. And it's not about the sacrifice. Getting married is a sacrifice. Dedicating your life to serving someone else forever, that's a sacrifice. Every old couple, if they're still, in their 80s or something, if you ask them the key to a good marriage, they'd probably talk about it's, loving your spouse and being there for them, even when it's not convenient for you.
Yeah.
And in that, you kind of like grow, your love grows, and you kind of grow to truly be one person. And that's the environment that children need. Through that, they learn how to be good citizens, how to be good friends, when families can kind of seeing their parents work out conflict. I think that's another reason why divorce is so painful, is because children don't see their parents learn to work together and learn to work out conflict. There's just a break.
Yeah.
And so, um, yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely the
So
same
if I'm actually
with donor
asking you,
conception. It's
yeah,
like the nature of donor conception is not the nature of parenting. And so you have to learn that over time as the parent of the child. And that can be really hard. And that can kind of devastate your relationship. Like my mom and I have had 10 years to work through this.
but
Now
you
it's like,
discovered in 2014 that
yeah,
you were
11
going to,
years.
okay, and you're
Yeah,
28.
I'm 33.
I keep thinking you're
I
28 because you
appreciate that
look
you
so
think I'm
young.
28.
Right. So you were 20, wait, 33 minus
I'm
14 means you
33.
were
I'm Jesus's
18.
age. Yeah.
Okay. So you're
I
18
found
when you
out
found out.
I was 21.
I'm
I was
actually good
22,
with math,
a
Katie. I
week
just want to say this
before.
up front.
It was a week before my 22nd birthday. I was a
Okay.
senior in college. So technicalities. Yeah, it's been about 11 and a half years since I found out. So my mom and I have had a long time to kind of work through some of this. Like she, for years, I don't think she would mind me saying this because I'm really proud of her. For years, we had a lot of conflict about this. Like if I kind of shared my thoughts or my struggles, she would become defensive of my dad who raised me, her husband. And it was just kind of all about him because she felt that my father, my true father, was a threat. At least that's how she came across to me.
Even
And
though she didn't know who he was, right?
yeah, yeah, right. Because it was anonymous. And they were told that like he's not the real father, you're the real dad because you're raising the children. And those terms are real, real father are used. This idea that the real dad is the one who's raising you, or the real mom is the one who's raising you, not who you come from. Just what you said earlier about language matters so much. And she and I have had the chance to kind of have a lot of conversations and conflict and work through them. And she's now very empathetic. And I feel like she's come around
That's
where she can like listen to me. And she's apologized for what she did. So
that's got to be healing so many wounds right there.
yeah, I'm really blessed. Yeah.
Are you an only child?
I've no, no. I feel bad for some of my friends and family who haven't had the opportunity to work through their issues with their moms.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends in this phase of life who are just like have so many childhood wounds they haven't addressed. So I'm really grateful that she's addressed those with me. Um, but no, I have one full brother I grew up with.
So he
So
was
they used,
a child of sperm donation as well, and
yeah,
the same
we have the
gamete.
same father too. Yeah.
Okay.
So he found our father, and since then, over the past 5 years, we've had 7 half siblings. Sorry, we've had 5 come up through DNA testing since we were the only ones at first, and then like I think 5 have shown up since then, and 2 through might be 4. It's just 4 have shown up through DNA testing, and then our father was married, and so he has 2 children who are younger than me. So far, I'm the youngest one, but he stopped selling his sperm when he got married, and so his 2 children from his marriage are younger than me. But one's not in contact with him, and the other one, I think neither of them are in contact with him actually.
Neither of who? His own birth children, or
Yeah, his own birth children. Yeah,
why? That you're aware of?
just that's their own drama.
Oh, okay. So nothing to do with this per se. The fact that,
No,
okay.
not to
Yeah,
do
then
with
we
this.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have found out that you and your brother, so you have the same dad and the same mom, but
Hmm.
your father didn't raise you, have also, just so I got the numbers right, 5 additional half siblings? Or is it 5
Um,
plus the 2 he had with his wife? So are there 7?
it's 4 plus the 2 he had with his wife. I got my numbers crossed.
So there's 8. He
Um,
has 8 children. He's
so he
fathered
has
8
8
children.
children so far.
And you've met how many of them?
I've met everyone except Andrew, who just came on the scene like 2 weeks ago.
How does that feel? Do you feel like siblings?
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Tell me
Yeah.
about that, because
They're
I
half
think
siblings. So I grew up with a half brother. My mom was married once before
Mhm,
and had Brian, who I grew up with, who's 12 years older than me. So I also have one maternal half sibling. Um,
mhm.
so it's not like a full sibling where you
No, but you share.
almost have this kind of like telepathic relationship with your full siblings. It's not like that, but it's I think half siblings have the same DNA actually as cousins, first cousins. So, that kind of familial closeness is similar to a half sibling.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I definitely feel a connection with them. And Cameron is the first half brother I met, which was from my father's birth son. And he gave me a big bear hug, and it felt like a brother hug, you know. I have two
Yeah.
older brothers. That's what I grew up with, and it really felt the same hug as it did with my other brothers. So I'll always remember that. And
That
then
was,
meeting my father was just like, he was just such a dad. He
what
had
does
like
that
the dad
mean?
belly,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
the dad shirt, you know. I looked just like him, and we could talk for hours. We just talked for hours. It was really
What
nice.
what are his thoughts? I actually, since I scheduled you to be on the podcast, and of course, I've been reading Katie Faust's book, Them Before Us, which is so powerful. But I've seen podcasts and websites about fathers who were sperm donors who said, we weren't really told the ramifications, and we want to see our children. Once we wake up, we're like, what did we do? I have children. I'm a father. And so did you know that there's a site for dads also seeking the children that they, uh, um,
No.
oh my gosh. Well, I'll give you that up
Okay,
after
thanks. Yeah. I've been
uh,
out of the
the
movement
loop.
really. I've just been doing stuff like this for the last, I don't know, 4 years basically since I
I'll
got
connect you
married.
with that.
That'd
But
be
the
great.
idea that these men, which was so eye-opening for me, they're like, we just didn't know. And it was sold to us that we were helping someone. And then the idea that, okay, so for some of us, it was just money. But then when we woke up, it was like, what the heck did I do? This isn't just money. This is a child. Anyway, so your dad, how
Yeah.
did he feel? Is he like, I'm
He
so
thought he
glad
was
I did this?
helping families. Yeah. He feels bad that we've all gone through the pain that we've gone through, and he wishes that he were involved at a younger age.
Yeah.
So,
So of your
but he's also
siblings.
Catholic and has at least tells me he wants to go back to the church and has gone to confession for this. So I'm really grateful that he's kind of been open to that. Because I actually told him to, because he didn't realize it was a sin.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, there's
Yeah.
so
So
many
it's
layers. Yeah.
been for him, it's been redeeming because he's out of touch with the family that he had and
You mean the one
estranged.
that he produced with his wife and then children?
Yes,
Okay. Okay.
because they got divorced.
Yeah.
And for him it's like this redemptive thing in the end because we want to know him and we're coming up on the scene and he's not as lonely anymore. um
Yeah.
he yeah, he's really proud of his children, whereas before I think it didn't occur to him, and since it was anonymous, I don't know if he forgot. I don't know what those 30 or 40 years were like before my brother and I came into contact with him. I have no idea, but now he's very open, but his initial thoughts were just that he was helping families, and that was
Yeah.
kind of it. They don't even
So,
make that much money, sperm donors.
yeah.
It's not like surrogacy or egg donation, which are obviously more invasive,
Right.
but
Right.
that's a little more exploitative in a
Yeah.
different way.
So you've talked to your half siblings. And again, this goes back to, I'm going to send this show to my family member. And then I don't want to put any leading questions, but I do want to say, you've said to me before we went on the air, I don't know how everyone in the world feels, but I do know about the people that I've met. So just looking at your own siblings and the community of people that have been conceived of sperm donation, what percent of them feel similar to you? Which percent of them, or even your own sibling, hard feelings? I'm looking at this. Do they have hard feelings? Do they have good feelings? How do they feel?
Hard feelings. I've met hundreds of donor conceived children because of
What?
conferences. Like one conference happened in New York City. There was, I don't know how many of us were there. Maybe not hundreds, but and then on Facebook, I've only met one person and seen one interview where someone said that they were okay with it. And I told you this on the phone, but the one person who told me she didn't see anything wrong with it was very defensive and lashed out at me pretty inappropriately when I had said like, oh, there's this website you can post your story to, um, which has all different perspectives on it, called anonymous.org. I don't know if it's still active,
It is. I
but
went there.
okay, back then it was, yeah. So if she's okay with it, she can post that, but she was so offended that I was suggesting that donor conception is wrong. And she said, my mom picked me out of a magazine, which I found very offensive because she's not a product. But she'd kind of just absorbed this messaging about it and clearly hadn't really had peace about it because she was so defensive. I think if she were truly peaceful about it, she would say, oh, that's nice. Yeah, like my experience has only been positive. So I'll post my story. If that's like a truly okay, confident response, not,
Mhm.
I can't
Anger
believe
and yeah.
that, yeah, anger and lashing out. I
Anger
was
is a
shocked because,
secondary emotion, Katie. It's always covering up a primary emotion. So that,
oh,
yeah,
wow.
is so there's
I was
what's the primary
shocked because
emotion she's
I
feeling?
didn't think I had been offensive at all, you know? So
Yeah.
that's interesting that you said that.
Well, and in doing research for this show, I came across a video where it was a conference sponsored by homosexuals, pro-homosexuals, and they had a panel of children to say, what's it like being raised by two mommies or two daddies? And it was, of course, billed as this great event. And these kids were like, oh, and here's the good, and they were speaking all these talking points. But as I looked, these kids were 6, 7, 9, 12. None of them really got to the age of critical thinking yet. They were still at the age where they can be spoon-fed the narrative. And I thought, why don't you get some 20, 30, 40, and 50-year-old
Yeah.
children of anyway? So that's why it's so important to get your perspective out there. So of all your siblings are like, this was not, I mean, we're glad to be alive, but
Hmm.
this created a void in my life. And I just
And I
want,
will say it's the only reason I am a very normal functioning person is because of my faith and because of the sacraments. Like that's the only reason I have a healthy marriage. That's the only reason I could get married in the first place to a healthy man because I had the support of the sacraments and um, friends who knew what was best for me. And my husband was so like objective. He was like, we're good together. Every time I felt this fear, like he was just going to abandon me, because that's how I felt, coming from being abandoned by my own father, he would reassure me and we'd have a conversation. But I look back and I think like, oh, I tried to break up with him like 4 times.
oh,
When he is such, he's like
he's your rock.
on his way to being a saint. Yeah, he's a very good man. He's very devoted to being a good person and being the man that God made him to be. And it's interesting talking about the pains because I know among my siblings, the hardest time they have is actually with their mothers. It's their mothers who are controlling and who discount their feelings and who have all this baggage, who had to have a baby, and so they did whatever they wanted. And so they still have not shaken that mindset. And that's what I was saying earlier. The mindset going into donor conception is not loving sacrifice, and that will haunt your relationship, maybe the rest of your life with your child, unless you're willing to change, like my mom.
Yeah.
That is a constant factor with every sibling. And the one sibling I can think of who hasn't complained about that, his mom told him when he was 7 or 9, like very young, because I think that year she was divorcing the man who raised him. And so, but he still has a good relationship with him too and calls him his dad and stuff. But I would say he's kind of the healthiest, and he still is against donor conception. He has the best relationship with his mom and with the man who raised him, and he still is against it because it's not right. So I don't know.
So what are these other siblings, their relationship with the man who raised them? because you and I are not going to talk about that, and you have that
Yeah.
prerogative. And I
And
sense, is
I
that
will say,
similar for
no, I
many
love
people?
my dad who raised me. It's not like I don't love him or
I get
something.
it.
It's just, it's complicated. So I think, um, and I've respectfully talked about him. I think if you post my article, Healing from Donor Conception,
Which I'm
I
going
kind
to,
of
yeah.
elaborate more on it there a little bit. But it's just so,
Complex.
it is, because when someone, like, I'm sure anyone who's raised a child that's not their own will understand that it's complex. It's always complex when there's a family where someone's not related. And I actually feel almost the worst for him because he's surrounded by children who are related to my mom, but not to him.
Yeah.
And it is complex. It creates this weird dynamic with, I've seen it, like there's like weird male dynamics with the boys.
That's what I was going to ask.
It's
So,
almost less with me, and it's more like with them, there's this weird, it's just always weird, when you have a
yeah.
natural family, the father's the head of the family. Sure, people might have problems with him, but like he's the head of the family, there's no question. But there's this kind of like power struggle amongst the men, I've noticed, when the head of the family is not
Mhm.
their dad. So
So you have seen
that's
similarities
as
in
much
how
I'll say
donor
about that.
conceived people have relationships with their mom, and donor conceived people have relationships with the man who raised them. Do you see similarities
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah. My sisters talk about that too, like just the disconnect between the man who raised them. They say, I love him. Obviously, he was a big part of my life. He raised me, but there was a disconnect. And now knowing that they're donor conceived, it's kind of like, finally,
Makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, it makes sense. And now can meet this man who's my father, who talks as much as I do, who's a good listener though. Like he's such a good listener. And he's a doctor. He was a psychiatrist, and that's the whole story. But now he does like roofing and finds money through physical labor,
But your
like management.
biological father, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, which is so funny. As a psychiatrist, now he's probably getting into the heads of people
he
going,
is.
right?
And that's what, when we first met him, he was kind of analyzing us like, oh, so you didn't perfectly fit with the man that they chose because of blah, blah, blah. Like, well, no, we didn't perfectly fit with him because he's not you.
Aw,
It's not this super scientific thing.
that's
So
awesome.
it's fun talking to him because he has all these medical tidbits,
Hmm.
and now he kind of sees like, oh, I'm irreplaceable. He's, as the father, I'm irreplaceable. Shoot,
Yeah.
I should have been there. I think
But do you think that
and now
led?
he is there. He's trying to make up time. So
That's what I'm saying. But you said now
good.
he's a roofer. Do you think that that hurt him to find out some of the consequences of his choice?
What do you mean?
Well, you said he left psychiatry and now he's a
Well,
roofer.
that was like 2 decades ago.
That he
That had
left.
nothing to do with donor
Oh,
conception.
okay, okay,
Yeah, no, that was totally separate.
okay. Can
Yeah.
we go back and just for people who haven't yet read your article, but just to hear it from you, can you kind of tell us about your childhood and your life? Did you?
Yeah.
I
So
reread the article again today, so I know the
okay.
story, but
Yeah. Yeah. So growing up, I thought we were like this perfect family, and kind of in a way that of being in denial, like not, that optimistic, childlike, wanting my family to be
right,
perfect because I love my family. And then, but the reality is that I was really ready to leave high school because I was really ready to leave home. I never really felt like I fit in anywhere. And that's a common thing with my siblings too. It's just kind of feeling in high school, I don't really fit in anywhere. Um, and yeah, we all experience that, which I think is also key. And I think adopted children probably feel that way too, just based on stories that I hear of, like my husband's high school, the two boys in his class who died were adopted, from, it was like drug overdose or something, which is really sad. And that's a whole nother thing. Adoption has its place, but I just felt that kind of like I don't fit in anywhere. And I went to college I hardly wanted to talk to my parents. I just needed a break. And, I I I felt obligated or something, like I had to be in a relationship with them. There was like this, I always felt obligated. It didn't feel like there was
Natural.
natural love. Yeah.
Ease. Hmm.
So I did my college thing, and at the end, my parents sent me down. I noticed my dad had stopped reaching out to me over the course of the last year, like the man who raised me.
Hmm.
It's
So we're
like,
looking
this is
around
kind of weird.
2013, he stopped reaching out to you because you're about to find out in
Yeah.
2014. Okay.
No, I found out 2000. Yeah. I found out late 2012,
Okay.
and kind of the previous year. So like 2011, I was like 2 years into college. I just remember him not contacting me very much at all. And to an extent that I asked him to drive up because it was only like a 2-hour drive from where they lived to my college town. I asked him to come to breakfast so that we could talk. And I was like, why haven't you been reaching out to me? And he was like, oh, I don't know. Like, he didn't even realize that he hadn't been investing in me. And that's very much not it's just not like him. Um, but I think, yeah, he hadn't been. So that was kind of a flag, like, what's going on? Um, and then looking back, there had been moments where I think I shared this in the article, but he, talked about his DNA and his ancestry. And I would say, oh, so this is your ancestry. So that means my ancestry is XYZ. And he just wouldn't affirm me. He would just say, like, that's my ancestry. Like, he just wouldn't say, like, oh, yeah, that's also yours. So he really tried to avoid lying outright. And he admits that. He says, like, now I know that that's a sin to lie by omission, he calls it.
Right.
And they sat me down Thanksgiving right before I turned 22. My birthday is December 2nd. And he said, I'm not your biological father. Like, I cannot have children. Matt, my full brother, already knew, which is why they're telling me. He had known for 6 months, I think. And the reason they told him is because Matt explicitly asked how he was conceived, because he had always struggled with identity with their dad. And again, that like kind of power struggle, like there was something off about the relationship, so much so that when Matt's then wife was pregnant with my niece, it made him question like okay, how was I conceived? Because I know you guys had issues, but it's never been clear. And they finally told him. And I think he said, if you don't tell Katy, I'm going to. So he gave them like a timeline to tell me. Um, so I called him right after they told me, and um, it was shocking because it just rocked my soul. Like everything I knew was wrong, and everything I knew was different. And so that kind of denial I had been in as a child hit full force, where I had to face reality. And I started just kind of simmering. Like, my brother had been simmering for so long. He was on fire and just wanted to find her father. But for me, I think I had to just kind of take it in. And I was leaving college. So I was going into the professional world for the first time. Um, and soon after, I met devout Catholics, and I found so much comfort in the church's teachings that it
So
is
you weren't
wrong.
Catholic before this?
No, I was evangelical
Okay.
Christian, like a non-denominational. And that was my own journey with that. Like, I had been questioning that too, because I just didn't find the theological depth that should be in the church that Jesus founded 2000 years before. It's like something is not not here.
Yeah.
So I was really happy when I started learning about Catholic teachings, because so many of my questions were answered, and all of my doubts were answered too. It was like there was always openness to my questions and reason. And it did not take me long to convert, but like, I think like 4 months after I started learning about the church, I wanted to become Catholic. So it wasn't because of donor conception, but it was comforting knowing, and it was beautiful hearing the teachings on sex and marriage and theology of the body, just like the very basics on all of that for the first time. I'd always kind of questioned, like since college, I'd kind of been against contraception, but I didn't have a theological reason for it, other than if God made us to avoid children, like he would build it into our systems so that we're not like suppressing our fertility and using it as a band-aid for other health problems. I kind of felt that way in college. So that was affirming too. And then I think the next year, my brother found our father after I'd been in DC for an internship. I went to a fellowship program in Philly and he texted me a photo. And I was floored because I looked just like this man. And everyone's told me that I look like my mom. So I didn't really question my identity a lot growing up like my brother did. But when I saw this picture, it was just, I favor him so much.
Mm-hmm.
Even like my brother and I have talked about, I even favor him kind of more than he does. My brother looks a little bit more like our grandfather.
Your
I mean, both of
grandfather
our,
on your mom's side or on your dad's side?
both. I think he looks a little bit more like both grandfathers than like the actual appearance. So it's funny. So yeah, I was just really, um, that was shocking and I was crying and I don't know, he finally came into contact with him for a relationship. I think it took like 5 years after his first contact. So it was several years before I got to actually meet him. But I did, which was a dream come true. I didn't really want to get married before I met him, and I was dating my husband at the time, and I went out to meet him, and then 3 weeks later, my husband proposed because he felt like I was ready.
Was your biological father at your wedding?
No,
Would you have invited him or did you?
yeah, I did, but we talked on the phone before the mass.
So I see your pain. It just shows how all of this creates a web that we can't even comprehend. And I just need to say to you, thank you. I see how hard this is. And if we didn't talk about this, though, Katy, if someone wasn't as brave as you, my family member may still go and do this. Other women, other people might still think this is okay. So I just need to remind you your courageousness, the courage of your mom for saying, I'm sorry, the courage of your biological dad for saying, I made a mistake, going to confession. We are all sinners, have
Yeah.
in relationship with other sinners. But we're here to give truth. And like I heard another person speak, we're here neither to condone nor condemn, but to speak truth. And so I just you're a powerful, mighty woman of God that you can walk through your pain and still talk and say, Lord, here I am. I've come to do your will. And this is a beautiful way of doing his will, I would say.
Thank
So
you.
thank you. So just last thing about your childhood. So you felt in the other videos I'm watching, so it sounds to me, because you thought you had a perfect childhood, right? So healthy mom, healthy dad, providing, doing the things, the Christmases, the birthdays, whatever.
Yeah.
But all the videos I've watched, I watched videos on surrogacy. I was born by surrogacy too, things like that. And they said there's an instant abandonment. And here's the thing, we think because someone can't talk about something, that it means it never happened. An infant, the surrogate woman said, this woman who was born of surrogacy, she goes, I was inside the womb of this woman for 9 months. I heard her heartbeat. I heard her voice. When I came out, I wanted to be on her breast. I couldn't say that as an infant, but instantly I'm pulled from this person. I mean, can you imagine the terror? If you're a child of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And you're pulled from your mom. Well, it's the same terror as an infant. It's like, who's this
Even
other
my
person?
son, I take him to a morning group once a week so I can have like 3 hours to work or do something like this.
To be sane.
Yeah. It took him 6 weeks to confidently let me go.
Yeah.
I had to stay with him for like half an hour. The first week I just left, he had a really hard time and he was aggressive. So I said, okay, I'm not doing that again. So I had to stay for half an hour
Mhm.
the
To
second
help
time
the
until he was
child.
comfortable. Yeah.
So
And
you
he was
mentioned
comfortable. And
abandonment. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. And then each time it got less, and it was like the next time it was 20 or 15 minutes or something before he was into his play enough that I felt he was comfortable for me to leave. And, he
Yeah.
learned like, oh, mommy's coming back. Oh, I really like this play group. I get to do all this stuff.
Mhm.
I get to be
But
with
you
other kids.
eased him into that process. He wasn't just
Yes, I
ripped out
did.
of your arms. And you mentioned abandonment, and these children
Yes.
born of surrogacy mention abandonment. And there's this theme of abandonment that, God builds truth into our DNA. For instance, I don't know if you knew this, but for every child you carry in your womb, even if you miscarry them or abort them, that baby's cells are present in your
Hmm.
body forever.
Yeah,
So
it's amazing.
the baby's cells will try to heal you even once you've given birth to your son 10, 20, 30 years from now.
Wow.
His cells that remain in you, if you get sick, his cells actually rush to try to heal you. It's like the son
Wow.
trying to heal the mom. It's this beautiful thing. So
Oh,
yeah, so this baby, this woman who's a surrogate is so attached because this baby cells will always be in her body, and then she sells this child. And so
yeah.
the woman that I saw talk she's an atheist, and she still was angry because she had only found out about a year ago, and she's speaking, and she said it's prescribed abandonment. It is paid for and prescribed. It's like abandonment, being an orphan, your parents died is one thing. It couldn't
Right.
have been avoided, but I'm prescribing this abandonment. Here, purchase this. And so, can you speak to me more about abandonment, or do you think you just did it with your son? Because it is a theme I want everyone who's considering sperm donation or surrogacy or in vitro, I want you all to consider that. What can you
Hmm.
speak to that based on all the people that you know and have met and your half siblings about abandonment?
This is hard because I even see it with we can get as detailed as um like sleeping with your kids or not.
Oh, like
Like I
co-sleeping.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't co-slept, but I've noticed, my son, like the last 2 nights actually, he's woken up and wanted to come into bed with me. He's at this phase where he's afraid and he just wants to be with me more. But I've gone through this with him multiple times over his childhood where he wants to sleep with me. And there is a kind of sense of like, I actually want that too. And I feel like when I've actually felt much closer to him if we're traveling or something. I don't get as snipey with him. It's like I feel like we're more in sync when we're also like
Yeah.
sleeping next to each other and snuggling at night, if I'm his comfort and he's right there. So there's this whole spectrum of like, children, especially young children, really, really need their mother. And they also need their father, but their mother is so key in those early years. And then you could go into, okay, we're not sleeping in the same bed. We're sleeping separately. Well, that's okay. It's probably not the ideal, but it's okay. And then you go into, well, what about full-time childcare? Childcare. Like someone else is raising your child. That's just what it is. Daycare, school,
I felt
whatever you want to
that when
call
my
it.
kids went to daycare. I was like, they're spending more hours of their waking hours with that babysitter than with me.
Wow.
I left my husband, and we were separated for 4 years, and we got back
Oh
together,
my
just had our
goodness.
40th anniversary. I know,
Yay!
wonderful story.
Happy
Um,
anniversary.
I know, but
Beautiful.
those 4 years, because I was a single mom and I had to work, it was my own
Yeah.
choice. I knew that and I'm like, this babysitter wasn't best. This one wasn't the best. This one did this. One woman smoked pot while she had my kids. I was like, they didn't love my
Wow.
children. They just were
Right.
receiving money. They were supposed to be with me,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's so
so,
sad.
but
And
people
like
don't
you
want to
said,
say that because then it
some
sounds
women
like
are
you're
in a
judging.
position they feel like they have to, which, that happens. Sometimes that
Got to
happens.
do what you have to do.
I would love to see pro-life policy where we're supporting mothers to be home with their kids instead of giving them childcare,
Yeah.
you know,
But that was done on purpose, and that's a whole different show.
finances.
When the
Right.
communism
That's a whole nother
socialism came in, it
conversation.
was done intentionally, but whatever.
But I know, like, for babies and young children, this adjustment to not being with mom full time can take at least 2 weeks, and sometimes go into the first year of sleep problems and like all this other stuff because the child is not
Bedwetting.
with the mom enough. So if that's just a small picture that we're not addressing at all, right? Like, no one really talks about that except Suzanne Venker and Erica Komisar and people who are really diving into the needs of children. Um, so that's like a small scale abandonment. So go full-fledged into donor conception or surrogacy, which surrogacy is the worst because it's usually using a woman and a man who may or may not be raising the child, and then bringing them together in a third party who's going to carry and give birth to the child. That's potentially 5 different people raising this child or being in this child's life. When the child just needs their mother and father, the child's not going to miss the other
Biological
3
mom and
if they're
dad.
not in life. Yeah. So it kind of ties together the worst of like every situation. And like you said, it's prescribed. So yeah,
We play God and we fail
we do. Yeah, we
because
do. It's
people
not like it's
deserve to be
easy.
happy.
And it's
And
not
that's
like it's easy being a stay-at-home mom, but like the more you're there, the more you kind of learn how to do it and learn that, okay, it's easier if I respect my child's dignity and just take each phase as it comes and ask for help because I'm clearly not an expert at being God. You have to ask for help to be a virtuous mom and to be a virtuous person and embrace your suffering. Like, life is not easy. We
that was
all
my
have
next question.
crosses.
Our Catholic faith
Really?
dictates. Oh, it was actually so many people say, well, you deserve to be happy. God wouldn't want you to not have a child. You don't know that. Maybe God didn't
You don't know
design you
that?
to have a child. But what the Bible never once says, Jesus never ever said, I want you to be happy. He said, I want you to be happy forever in eternity. But on
Right.
this life, Jesus says again and again, pick up your cross and follow me. Infertility is a cross. The inability, the death of a child or a parent is a cross. The cancer is a
Losing someone you
cross.
love is a
Is a
cross.
cross.
Yeah.
It's all a cross.
I feel for your family member, like what happened with her relationship that didn't work out. That's really hard.
Right.
That's a cross.
It's a cross. But our Catholic faith says, don't just carry your cross, but there is a joy in carrying your cross. There is a union with Christ in carrying your cross that you won't experience anywhere else. And which I'm starting to tell a lot of people because I'm excited about this, is that it's kind of like math, right? Or science. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It is the same because science is always in line with the Bible. To every degree of suffering you have on this earth, there's a greater level in heaven that you attain in the next world. There are levels that St. Paul talks about, and you can theologically go into them. But if I constantly throw away my crosses here and say I get to heaven and girl, as long as I drag and I'm the last one in and I get a little beach bungalow, I'll take it, right? A tent on the beach. But there's people with mansions. They're going to be,
Yeah.
it's just people, the saints, those who died for Christ, they'll have an even higher level. I think the people in Africa today who are suffering and starving and they live in dung huts, and I think that their levels in heaven are going to be so high because their levels of suffering were so great here. And those of us in America, we've got a bedroom for each kid, and we've got a change of clothing and change of shoes, lots of change of clothings. And we've got televisions and iPads and everythings and food galore, and we got to go to Weight Watchers because
And we're not happy.
and we're not happy. And we go to
Yeah.
Busch Gardens and we pay so someone can spin us around in a roller coaster. And we have money for that when my friends in Uganda just want food. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's the joy of, yeah, you're going to suffer as a single mom, but you're going to have joys too because you're going to unite them to Christ. That's why be Catholic, you guys. You're going to get the truth. Sorry. Commercial break.
I know a single mom of, I think it's between 5 and 8 kids. I can't remember the exact number, but her husband died and she doesn't work. Like she always has enough. God has given her and provided for her for a couple years now where she can still homeschool her kids and not
Wow.
work.
Wow.
So he can do anything. But
He
yeah, I
can.
read a testimony by an African person who said, yeah, we were scrounging for food every day, but we were all really happy. And the Western world has these like huge mental health crises because there's
Much
no,
wealth.
yeah, there's so much wealth. We're so comfortable, and the things that we suffer with are not, it's like
First
we try
world
to avoid
problems.
suffering as much as possible. Yeah.
Right. Right.
But it's always going to find you. You're always going to suffer. And embracing it is so much more freeing and learning from it than, running
Yeah.
away from it.
So I
Yeah.
kind of two more questions. One is kind of going
Sure.
back to the past, and then kind of more with the how are you today? How, so I'm gonna go there. But I had written down notes, because when you meet your dad, you met your siblings,
Mm.
and now you've seen pictures of your grandparents. Does that seem like a completion? Like,
Oh yeah. My niece, my sister Amy, who we discovered last year, her daughter looks just like our aunt. Her name was Aunt Kara, and she lived with our father the last years of her life. Like spitting image. And for her, it's kind of like, oh, I finally see who I look like. Because
yeah,
they had her and she's beautiful, but she had, obviously she looked somewhat like her mom, but she kind of looked different. And they didn't know like where in the family she fell from. And then they see Aunt Kara and they're just like, oh my gosh, she was so many similar, like the same face. So it's been so cool for all of us
I
to
know
see
it's been
each
different.
other. And
Yeah.
yeah, and we appreciate it because we didn't have it. Like one of my questions growing up was, where did I get my nose? Because it's kind of straight
Okay.
and prominent, and my mom and my dad who raised me both had kind of like cute little curved noses. And I was like, okay, my nose doesn't look like anyone in my family. But
Right.
my father, I have like his exact nose. That's one of the things that's where I look just like him.
Yeah.
So was that your question? I don't even remember what your
Kind
question
of,
was.
it's getting there. So
Okay.
before I get to the healing question, which we can end
Yeah,
towards a
yeah.
smile, I'm hoping this one isn't painful, is
Okay.
do you get the opportunity to do holidays or birthdays or things
Oh,
together with
oh,
the biological, your paternal
yeah.
side of the
So
family?
sort of. That's the hard part is you asked at one point what it's like meeting siblings. This past sibling that's come up, I haven't had a lot of feelings, to be honest. I think he's the fourth one. And maybe because I'm pregnant too, I'm just focused on preparing for a baby. But and taking care of my baby because I've had to do dietary changes and all this other stuff. But
No ice cream?
my yeah, no, I can't do ice cream. I feel so amazing now that I'm not doing ice cream.
Drama.
Yeah. Um, Also because my other siblings are kind of on top of it because they're so excited. And for them, two of them only found out in the last 2 years that they're donor conceived. And so they're
Different
like really on
stages of
top of,
healing.
yeah, getting to know each other. Um and so but the hard part, last past summer, I actually felt really overwhelmed because I wanted to go to Kansas City to see my father again and to meet my two sisters. But I also, my brother, Blake, who I did not grow up with, who was the first to come
The
in for
hugger?
DNA testing.
Oh, okay.
No, that's a different brother.
Okay.
That was Cameron. Yeah. Blake came on the scene right before I got married, actually. He was also just about to get married. So we were kind of on a similar life trajectory.
Trajectory.
He lives 2 hours from me, and he was wanting to get together. And my husband is a teacher and has summers off and is so exhausted from the school year. And just didn't want to travel a whole lot, and so I was like, okay, but I have all these people I need to see because they're family and we're not going to do holidays together. And that's the hard part because with siblings usually you see everyone at Christmas or something, but with us we have to all go out of our way to make time and to kind of make sibling time. And the trip did happen. My husband ended up not coming, which was totally fine. And we kind of both felt like this is like kind of my time to be with my sisters and have sister time. And so someday I hope he meets my father. But it was a gift to be able to go and see them and meet them. And we spent like 4 hours in a restaurant, and then I saw our father, and then got to spend the next day with my father. So it is tricky kind of going out of my way. I felt really overwhelmed, but like that happened. And then I saw Blake this fall. He came and visited us down in Naples, and he like treated us to this resort pool that he stayed out with his wife. And she was also expecting, they just had a baby boy. So it's kind of just like little by little spending time together, but it's not going to
Coming
be this
together.
regular
Right.
Christmas seeing everyone. Yeah.
You should, yeah, like every July 18th should be your holiday, you know?
Yeah, that's a good
something.
idea. Just make up a holiday.
This is going to be our, Katy family holiday, whatever the
That's
name
a
is.
really good idea.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like your
I like that
Christmas.
idea.
Maybe we
But it's
exchange
not as
presents or
overwhelming.
something, or you are each other's present,
Yeah,
So that
right.
leads into my final question,
Okay.
kind of real question. Talk to me about healing. Has meeting them healed you? Began the process, finished the process? Will the process ever be complete?
It won't be complete. So when I meet siblings, not this past one, but usually this kind of this punch and this pleasure. It's like a gut punch, like, oh my goodness. I don't know how to describe it, but
Another one has to go through the pain that we've gone through.
yeah, no, it's like a punch to myself. It's like, oh yeah, this is who I
Another one
am.
I'm
That's
used
kind of
to.
how it feels. Yeah. It's just a reminder of that abandonment. And yeah, actually it is kind of what you're saying too. Like they're going through what I have gone through. And the silver lining is that they are there and we have each other and we all understand. So we talk about it. We have a Signal app messaging group
Mhm.
that we talk on. So we send pictures and just kind of chat through that too about what's going on, because it's easier to do that than have phone calls all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And we
I
can
have
call each other
siblings,
too.
I know.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe one big Zoom call sometime, who knows? But even that's hard because you
Yeah,
gotta.
exactly.
So what
So,
would you say if you looked into the camera and said to any man considering sperm donation, any woman considering having a child by a sperm donor, donating her eggs, look into the camera and tell that person, based on your life, your story, your knowledge, what you would have them do?
don't do it. Yeah, don't do it. It's not your job. Your job is to, I don't know, do your own thing. And then if you want to find someone and get married, great, and have children with them. But it's not helpful. Because the people who are infertile will also always deal with infertility. Like their health issues are not going to resolve. They are not getting the children in their own relationship, which is who they actually want. They're getting someone like me I'm great. I obviously have dignity, but I have my own mother and father that I'm going to long for. And that's who they want. They're going to want you. They're not going to want, you know, whoever's raising them. So
You actually just made me think of a question.
you can't change that.
Has your biological mom and dad ever met each other?
No. They've
Have you?
chatted once, so it's
They,
not good.
oh, okay. I was
Yeah.
curious. Like,
No, they've never met. Yeah. There
okay.
was an angry message sent, and that's all that happened. And it was devastating. I was like, oh my gosh, why is this
Oh my
happening?
gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Second to last, it's kind of like a fill in the blank. When I die, I will know my life has been a success if.
Ooh.
I know. Pretty deep, right?
Well, the first thing that came to mind is if my children are faithful. So, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
they
Last
love
thing.
God. Yeah.
Another answer. Why am I forgetting? Okay. Name one thing you would have our viewers do differently as a result of something they heard today. This is for every viewer now.
Hmm. Um, Yeah, I think when I say faithful for my children, I mean literally filled with faith. Like God wants what's best for you and loves you, and just always seek truth because you'll find him.
I agree. I agree. Katy, you are such a blessing. I know that God's already using your life, and he's going to
Thank
continue to
you. I
use you.
appreciate that.
And it is going to be
I need to hear
crazy.
that.
Oh yeah. Just wait till March when you're like, I don't even know how to purchase makeup. I can't even put it on. Yeah, you'll never wear lipstick for the next 6 years.
I don't actually own makeup. I'm glad
Oh,
that
but
you think
even
that.
better. One less thing to worry about because you're gonna have 2 kids gonna be puking on you. So it's
That's why I look so
awesome.
tired. Yeah.
Where, so what resources do you want me to put in the show notes? We're going to click a link to the article that you wrote that explains a little
Mhm.
bit more about your story, your coming out, right? Story.
Mhm.
Is there any website you want us to lead them to? I'm going to put connections
Well,
to
yeah,
us and Anonymous Us.
good. We didn't talk about restorative reproductive medicine, which is just whole body healing to help your fertility function properly.
Oh,
Especially as
yeah.
women, we have obvious fertile signs beyond our period that show healthfulness. If you're not ovulating, then something's wrong because ovulation is a part of your full health. So, restorative reproductive medicine tries to restore your health, and that's the primary goal. And it helps couples conceive children so
Wow.
much at a greater rate than, the invasive, non-helpful technologies like IVF. So there's a lot of different natural family planning methods that most people know that term, but there's like NAPRO technology is a big one, um, which is the Creighton model, and that my doctor for this baby is actually a NAPRO doctor because I had 3 losses prior to this baby. This is
Miscarriages, you
actually
mean?
I had 2 miscarriages and then I lost a twin.
Oh,
So this is actually our 5th child, even though it's our 2nd live baby. But she helped me with progesterone because she didn't even take labs. She just could tell by my chart and by
wow.
the symptoms I was describing. I didn't even give her a chart.
So it's
She's
holistic
like,
medicine,
this
basically,
sounds
that'll help
like
you.
progesterone. Yeah, it'll help couples who are struggling and it'll help you heal fully. And then they also help you target for conceiving too, if that's a goal, and they can help you avoid if you have to avoid for a while or to not conceive children. So there's a whole network of doctors and practitioners called Restorative Reproductive Medicine. It's the International Institute for Restorative Reproductive Medicine, which is what I worked for.
I will have the link
Um,
to that here as well.
Good, yeah. It's
Yeah.
IRRM.com or
Okay.
.org. I
Double
haven't.
I double R
Uh-huh.
M as in
Hmm.
Mary.com.
Yeah. Hmm.
Wow, what a gift. See, God created everything that we need here, and we need to stop making ourselves God and need to look
Hmm.
at some of these things and kind of put them back in order. And I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah. I even had like a
Excuse
thyroid.
me.
My thyroid was a little bit off, so they put me on thyroid and that helped my ovulation, which I didn't
Well,
know there was anything wrong with my ovulation until they put me on it. And yeah, it's
was
just
it a
amazing what your
pharmaceutical
body.
for your thyroid, or was it a
It was.
okay?
I hadn't tried supplements at the time. I think maybe later on I'll try supplements like iodine because I don't eat a lot of fish
I just have
to
several
see if
family
that
members that
helps.
deal with thyroid issue, and that's why I was like, "Whoa, is there something besides the pills?" Because right now you can't get your hands
Yeah.
on them anyway.
Yeah, there's also homeopathic remedies you can try. I'm just on like a small dose levothyroxine, so but yeah,
Wow, well, so much
stuff
to
like
talk about.
that.
Maybe we should have you on to talk about some of that. Just
Yeah.
because I do think there's
That's the
probably people
coolest
going,
part,
"What?"
honestly.
Well, let's do that. Let's commit to do a show where you get to brag about all these great things that we can do to help people that are struggling with infertility. Would that be
Maybe
okay?
I'll connect you with Dr. Purnell. Yeah, she would love that.
You guys heard it here first on Breakfast with Bacon. We're going to talk about that. But yeah, let's just put things back in order the way that God wanted them, and let's trust God. Let's do what He wants. He's got a perfect plan, not because He's the kind of prison warden that wants to punish you. He's the kind of loving daddy that wants what's best for you in abundance. So I appreciate that information too, Katy. And I appreciate your, as I said earlier, your honesty. You are going to help save souls and get more than just your kids to church. You, I believe, have saved at least one person from donating sperm and at least one woman from going to receive in vitro. And as a matter of fact, comment below on your experience with this. If you've had a child through in vitro, if you are a sperm don't a child born of donor conception, right?
Yeah.
Let us know
Yeah.
your comments. Let us know your thoughts. And email me, because unless Katy wants to give her email out, email me, Christine@breakfastwithbacon.com, and I will forward your questions to Katy. And if she is desirous of leading you in the right direction. I'm only saying that because I didn't ask her before we went on the air, and I'm not going to ask her publicly. So let's do it that way.
Sounds good.
And then, so if you could follow me on all my places, Instagram, Facebook, what's the other one? Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble,
Okay.
Dr. Christine
Not
Bacon.
X.
Yeah, not X. I just, whatever. I mean, I'm glad Elon Musk owns it now, but whatever. But follow me, and a lot of good information is out there, but it's censored. So I have been saying this on many shows this past year. Don't just be a passive recipient of whatever comes up in your scroll feed. Go, I hope you like my show because I have amazing guests like Katy. Subscribe. You'll get monthly newsletter. You'll get the shows will come. You'll know if all of a sudden you notice you're not getting shows from this person, and this person, might be because censorship took place. You'll be able to go to our websites and say, I want to follow this person. So it is happening. We're in that day and age, and I'd love to have you continue to follow me. Just want to get souls to heaven. So anyway, I think I've done all the things I'm supposed to talk about. So are we good, Katy?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, so we're gonna see if Katy passes the test. I told her how we end the show. Let's see if she remembers. Thank you all so much for watching. I am Dr. Christine Bacon. You've been watching Breakfast with Bacon, and I want to remind you always to live your life.
Sunny side up.
You passed. You got it.
Thanks, Christine.